Welcome to Witch Hat Chats. My name is Saul Ravencraft. Nikki, Kirby, our host, our wonderful host, has had to step away for a spell. And so she has trusted me to do the show on my own, which is a little scary, but we're going to make it go. We're absolutely going to make it go. For myself, this is a busy month for me. If you go to my website, saulravencraft.com, I do have something on the front that'll point you to things that I'm doing now. And I have several spirit sessions going on during the month. And there's one public appearance that is scheduled where I'll be doing readings as part of an event. And I've got several private events that I'm involved with ACL and other things going on. So those aren't all available to the public, but I'm sharing everything that I can. And of course, if we can find a slot for you, I do house parties and events. If you're doing a commercial event, you'd like to have something a little different, a little special, a little witchy going on there, we can certainly hook that up. You got to reach out. And of course, this stuff doesn't just happen in October, all year round. So reach out to me. Let's get to know each other. The best way to keep up with what's going on with me, though, is probably still Facebook. That's where I am most active, and I put up stories and information and events and all of that there. So you should be following Saul Ravencraft, Executive Occultist, the page on Facebook. And if you're interested in some of the more woo stuff outside of what I do here on the podcast, I've got the Texas Mojo Man page on Facebook. And I haven't done a lot there because most people tend to follow me through the Executive Occultist page, but some of that information is probably going to start to diverge a little bit. So if that's a side of me you want to connect with, be sure you follow on both of those pages on Facebook, because they may not always have the same information. And of course, Nikki is not here to talk about what's going on with her, but she filled me in. And there is a lot going on. For Nikki, at Evermoving We Rise, they are coming up on the first ancestor blessing ritual. And this is something that happens in different cultures. I've heard of ceremonies where the ancestors, those that we may not be connected with, those that may not have found a spiritual path, there's a blessing and a connection to those, a reaching out to those. And it's going to be a very moving and meaningful event. You can find out more about that on the Evermoving We Rise website and Facebook page. Now, Moonlight's Potions and Charms, they continue to get 5-star reviews, 5 stars for excellent products, 5 stars for amazing service, and 5 stars for fast shipping. They are an Etsy star seller, and they get that stuff out. If you've ever tried to do things, I mean, I've had things, letters that postcards, birthday cards that have sat around waiting to go into the mail. That's not the way you do it. That's not how you get 5 stars. These people are on it. You will be amazed at how well they connect with your order, get it to you, and follow up with you if you need it. Also, Moonlight's Potions and Charms are continuing to do their readings and coaching. This is something that I do, but we all have different approaches. And I would say if you've enjoyed Nikki's energy on this show, then you definitely want to reach out to Moonlight Potions and Charms and get a personal session, to get a reading, to get some influence on what it is that you're doing. And they're always coming up with new stuff. The new fun item has been the little skeleton statues that are see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And they are just fun to have around and actually deliver an important message, a good reminder of how we need to handle ourselves and our energy moving forward. And the fun thing about something like that is it's like that talisman that's out there in plain sight. You can see it, everyone can see it, but not everybody knows what it means. I love that kind of stuff. They also have the hand statues, which are white with black artwork and black with white artwork, all gorgeous and good. I'm a palm reader, so that's something that I definitely want to have around to help remind people of that aspect of things. And the symbolism on there is fascinating as well. So definitely get that. Also, on October 22nd, Moonlight Potions and Charms will be vending at the Paws 4th Annual Pets Fest at Morse Park in Lake Lure, North Carolina, between 10 and 2 o'clock p.m. It's a great family event. Bring the family, bring the pets, enjoy fun, eat food, dance to the music, and there will be all kinds of vendors from the Western North Carolina area tailored to your pet. There's going to be a raffle. Local animal rescues will be bringing animals out to adopt. So if you don't have a pet to bring, you may leave with one. And I tell you, adopted pets are the best kind of pets. I've had many adopted pets in my own life, and I just cannot imagine going and getting some sort of a purebred animal. I mean, it's great that they're there, but there's nothing like one of those animals needing a home. And this event will happen rain or shine. So if you look out and the clouds are gray, just get your umbrella and come on out, because it will be fun. The animals don't mind being in the rain, right? Especially the dogs seem to be all right with that. So we can get a little wet too. Also want to remind you that Witch Hat Chats is on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and probably any place you like to look for podcasts. We take an audio version of the show and we make that available so you can safely enjoy it while you're driving. And it's a great way you can subscribe so it just automatically pops up. And it's a great way to keep up with us even when you're on the go, even when you're driving around, even when you're running or exercising with those earphones in your ears. We can be right there with you. So best way to keep track of all this stuff is go to our Linktree. Go to Linktree, look for Witch Hat Chat, so you'll find the Linktree address in our notes. Check all that out. And one thing that we normally do together, this is the point where Nikki brings out the tea thingy. She drinks tea by Yogi, a positive energy tea. And every little tea bag, the tag has got some sort of an affirmation, some sort of a message on it. And today, even though she couldn't be here in person, she was able to tell me about her tea thingy, and it is spread the light. Be the lighthouse. That's a tough one. That is a tough one for a lot of us. Because a lot of the people that shine their light tend to shine it in your face. We have a lot of people that are they're on fire and they got to let you know it. And that's not exactly what we're talking about. Okay? This isn't about being famous. This isn't about being the center of attention. This is about not letting ourselves be hidden in the shadows. This is about recognizing those parts of ourselves that do warm and do light the way for the people around us. And to not hide it, to not be afraid of it, to not hoard it, but to be open with it. How do we know what parts of ourselves those are? And I think that's the tricky thing, because we all have these voices in our head that lie to us, that give us other kinds of information, that tell us that what is our light that can shine out is not something that anybody wants to be bothered with, not something that you need to calm that stuff down. And if we believe it, then yeah, we do hide our light and we sit in the darkness, and we are not part of that harmony that is created when all those lights come together, when all those vibrations come together. When you do your shadow work, well, you have to take a drink when we say shadow work. Oh. When we do that, we come into contact with aspects of ourselves that have been hidden away, that have been suppressed, that have been misunderstood. And they are all aspects of ourselves. They are all our desires. They are all our talents. They are all our observations and understandings, some of which are not compatible with the most popular things going on in society. And so what? So what? It is our nature. And our guest today, we're going to get into our natures and those parts of ourselves that we do suppress, and our misunderstandings of our aspects that we don't necessarily know how to deal with because we're too busy trying to be up here. So very relevant for everything today. So think about what you're hiding and where you could begin to let it go. And you may find that as that light shines, it not only warms and enlightens, but it even becomes a beacon for some people that are trying to figure out what to do with that same thing within themselves and can see it out there, proud and loud. Well, maybe not too loud. Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to listen to a word from our sponsors, and then we will be back with our guest. I think you're going to like it.
Have you wondered what spirituality is? Spirituality is limitless, as it does not contain any boundaries on beliefs or practices. Spirituality's most important component is personal experience and allows one to explore it freely. Evermoving We Rise is a spiritual moving tradition. As our name is our lifestyle, because we are persistently rising and moving forward. We realize that everyone's spiritual journey is extremely personal, but more easily traveled with reinforcement. We'll teach you to become friends with your shadow, emerge your authentic self, and give you time and space to develop your own spirituality. And when situations bump back, you'll have the entire community behind you, as we are a magical family who work to sustain each other. Discover the benefits of working within a society dedicated to helping you grow on your personal path. Visit us on our website, Linktree, or Facebook page and discover why we don't fit in the box.
Behind the door, and ye should find the return of the Barebone Trio. See no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. Skeletons. This Barebone Trio reminds us not to take life too seriously and shows us the sense of humor we all have. Each one crafted with specific detail and are great for the Day of the Dead, your ancestor altar, Halloween, Samhain, Hecate, and the possibilities are limitless. And there is so much more in our wicked store to help you to embrace the power of your own magic. So come on in to Moonlight Potions and Charms at www.moonlightpotionscharms.com and discover the wicked things that ignite the magical passion in you.
At Witch Hat Chats, we promote magical knowledge, arts, and music from all cultures. We invite you to join us as our guest to share your practice, especially if your traditions are lesser known. Email us at witchhatchats@gmail.com. Tune in every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our Facebook page.
Welcome back to Witch Hat Chats. It is time for our segment with our guest, and I'm very, very excited about this. Our guest today grew up in the suburbs and center of New York City, where he became fascinated by mythology and magic. He participated in many pagan groups, including Pagan Way, Welsh Traditional Wicca, and he is a founding member of the Horus Mat Lodge. He has several university degrees, including a master's degree in history, intercultural communications, and he has traveled extensively, researched throughout the world, written several anthologies, articles, and books on paganism, folklore, and magic, Western occultism, spells. He's here to chat with us today about his latest book, Werewolf Pack Magic, a Shapeshifter's Book of Shadows. I am so pleased to be speaking today to Denny Sargent. Hello, Denny.
Hi, how are you? That was one of the nicest intros I've ever had, I think. Thank you so very much. I feel like I'm a special person now.
Well, we want people, it's funny when people begin to be seen, everyone assumes that was just this instantaneous moment. And most people are actually overnight success, decades in the making. And it's important to show the work. And you have certainly worked to reach to this point.
Thank you so very much. That's very kind of you. I mean, some people think I'm nuts, but I have been a pagan and a witch and into magic for a long time. And this is where, I teach university, but I teach something very different. I teach linguistics and pedagogy and pedagogy. Anyway, I teach lots of different things. I teach teachers how to teach is what I do. But this is my world. This is my personal enjoyment, is researching magical topics of interest to me and then writing books about them. some of which are rather obscure. But this is a whole new, this werewolf magic thing is a whole new, I don't know, gold mine of interesting stuff and transformative stuff. And more than anything, I think these books have changed me. So.
Yes, yes. Well, let's talk a little bit about your, shall we call it, path to the moon.
Nice.
You didn't start there. You started in what would probably be considered more traditional. Well, traditional. I mean, these are traditions too, but in a more mainstream, I guess you could say, approach to magic and manifestation before you discovered your wolf self. So let's talk a little bit about the pathway from your earliest interest in magic and mythology, moving up to the point of that self-discovery.
Sure. So I was initiated as a witch at 14. I had to get a letter of permission from my parents. This was in New York City in the 70s. Things were very different then, and a lot of things went that you couldn't do nowadays. Let's just put it that way. So I got involved in paganism and witchcraft at a very early age. Even as a young person, I knew that I was a pagan, and I talked to trees and animals and felt the Mother Earth. And when I was forced to go to Presbyterian church, it didn't connect with me very well. So I've always been that way. I mean, I feel like I've reincarnated into that. I've always been interested in animals and the ideas of animism and whatnot. And but I never really got deeply involved in this subject at all until about 5 years ago. I had a really, really rough time. I lost my wife. I lost my house. I lost my job. It was one of those perfect tsunamis that took out pretty much everything in my life.
Wow.
And it was about the worst situation I've ever been in my life. I mean, I literally was at the end of my rope. I thought, okay, my life is done. I obviously, the entire universe is telling me, you're kind of done with this incarnation, time to move on. And I meditate every night. I'm a tantric. I'm an initiated tantric in a particular 2 different lineages, or what we call sampradayas. One is the not sampradaya, the other is the Uttara Kaula. So my night work, every time when I meditate, and what I do at night is I do a tantric meditation and just kind of push everything aside and sort of work with my higher self and all that kind of stuff, and just sort of try to center myself. And what started happening during this really, really horrible time about 5 years ago is, within this meditation, all of a sudden this wolf started to appear in my mind, and just sitting there. And it was the weirdest thing, because I was sitting there going, well, what is this? I had a very tight circle. I'm invoking, Shiva and Lakshmi and Kali, and I'm doing all these things and meditating on the guru and the holy guardian spirit and all this. And all of a sudden this wolf shows up and it's just sitting there. So I ignored it. And after about 4 or 5 days, I finally, when I finished my meditation, I finally just looked at this entity, and I said, well, who are you and what do you want? And the wolf is just sitting there, and it had 3 eyes, which I thought was very interesting. And it said, oh, I'm here to save you. You called me. And I said, I don't know, I was just like, well, I don't, and it just said, listen, you're on the edge of like losing it completely. And you called me, and your pain and all of this I'm going to tell you what to do. You need to get out, and you need to get out of yourself, and you need to get out of your human mind. And you need to come free, get free of this, so you can escape this spiral, this depressing spiral you're in, this very self-destructive. And I was at the end of my rope, and I said, okay, fine. I mean, I'll take whatever I can get in terms of help. And I said, what do I do? You said you throw a bunch of stuff in the car and you get into the wilderness. You get into the wilderness and you let go of what's going on with you, and I will follow you and I will help you. And I did. I just threw a bunch of crap in the car, and I'm in Seattle, Washington. So an hour away, and I'm in the high Cascades. And so I'm in, bears, cougars. I mean, I'm in absolute wilderness. So I went up there and I just unloaded some stuff and sort of lost it completely and ran into the woods. And at night, it turned out to be a full moon. Of course it did, right? And I ended up just ripping off all my clothes and losing it completely, and just letting the spirit come through me and rip open my constantly seething, stupid, ego-centered upper cortex brain, and just sort of drop me down into my animal self, because we are animals and we don't like to talk about it, but we're animals. So I went through this transformation. I didn't physically transform, but I stopped thinking, I stopped worrying, I stopped stressing, and I let the animal self come up, and I was comfortable and happy and focused, because I was in a state of being a pure animal. I wasn't cognating, I wasn't questioning, I was just existing sort of naked in the forest. And suddenly I was flooded with this incredible power of nature flowing through me. Like it's like this wall dissolved between me and the ecosystem, me and nature. And all of a sudden I was plugged in. And so the minute I was completely plugged in as an animal, then all of a sudden I could see in the dark just fine. And I could hear things. And I went wandering around in the woods for hours and hours. And I crept up on animals and was able to scare them. I was just this feral creature that was not paying attention to anything, wasn't thinking about anything. Came out of it the next day and sort of sat there in shock. And I realized I felt 100% better. And it was like a major psychological dump. The fact I had just been able to shut down my upper cortex and my ego and my brain and what's going to happen tomorrow, what happened yesterday, what I'm worried about, just shut it down completely and enter a pure animal state of just almost, Taoist simplicity, just being one, turned out to be like this major healing for me. And so I drove back, I kind of came out of it, I drove back and I was in kind of a shock about the whole thing, and sat down, and the wolf spirit kept staying with me and saying, okay, you got to start writing this down, because I'm trying to help you here. So I just started keeping diaries, and I had notebooks and notebooks and notebooks filled with this. And I became so fascinated by this panacea that I had stumbled onto, that I was like, okay, 1, why a wolf? 2, why is the spirit coming to me? 3, how does this work? And so the next 4 or 5 years was me doing research on werewolf cults, because the further I went into this in meditation, the more I realized that there was this, I wasn't a wolf, I wasn't a human, but when I went into that state of pure consciousness, I was essentially a werewolf. And I've always liked werewolves anyway. And so the wolf spirit kept feeding me information when I would work with it. And every full moon, I would go out into the woods, and I would follow. It would give me instructions like, okay, do this ritual, like rip off your clothes and do this, and howl and run around, and and it would give me information, and I would collate it and put it together. Now, I have to be honest and say to you, it never was going to end up as a book. This was me doing self-actualization and me trying to find a way out of the depression and deep sorrow and sadness and health issues that I was having. And using, obviously this wolf spirit had come to me, and I believe in animism, I'm a pagan. So then by the way, I started going through my notes. I had interviewed the Olchi shamans who were from Siberia, who I can use the word shaman because they're real shamans from real Siberia. And I had interviewed them and hung out with them and taken classes with them many years earlier. So I started thinking about the stuff that this woman had told me, this shaman who I had worked with and I had done workshop with, had told me about the situation. And she said, look, real shamans are shamans at about the age of 3 or 4. The animal spirits come to them and start talking to them, and that signifies that person's going to be a shaman. And it's not like in America where people go and get a certificate from a school and they're shamans. That's not how it works in the real world. I've been to about 30 countries. I've been to a lot of indigenous cultures, because that's what I like to do. Like Central Guatemala, I hung out with Mayan shamans. And anyway, I don't consider myself a shaman. I'm not. I'm not going to say that. I use shamanic practices that I've acquired, and that, but I have this connection with the spirit. It came to me. It took me a long time to figure out, like, this is kind of how things work in the animist world. The spirits come to you, they identify you, and they help you, and they basically are able to communicate with you and say, this is a path for you, or if you want to work with me, if you want to do this, you can. So slowly but surely, I built up a lot of information. Had no intention of writing it. I was trying to figure this out for myself. I was creating like my own grimoire on this werewolf shapeshifting stuff, that because the deeper I went into it, the more powerful it was, and the more how do I say this, more purifying it was. Like I was doing better and better. Every full moon, I would go into this trance state and let my higher thinking drop down into my unconscious mind, and let the wolf, let the animal spirit, which I more and more identified with as a sort of a werewolf figure or image, would rise up and take over, and then just shut down all that endless babble that our brain does, and I'd be just completely silent and as an animal, right? So I'm trying to figure out how to perfect this. Then I started writing rituals that came into it. It started feeding me like Greek ideas, Greek language and Roman language, Latin and ancient Koine Greek or ancient Greek. And I was like, I'm just, and runes, and then because there's a big connection with the Nordic countries and the Nordic cultures. So anyway, all of this just started flooding me, and I'm writing it down and organizing, and I'm like, I have no idea where I'm going with it. And I tell my friends, and they say I'm crazy. And I said, well, that's all right, because I'm feeling better. That's all I care about. And so my friends started seeing what I was doing, and they said, holy blank, you've got like, you're creating a whole system here. And I said, oh, I was kind of like, oh, I am? I don't know. All I'm doing is I'm trying to follow this thread, And then I started doing research on this. And as a historian, my first thing when I do books is I get really excited about the history and where it came from. So I started researching. So I had a bunch of stuff on shamanism already, and I had already read that and dealt with that. But I started looking up the werewolf cults, and was wondering, are there such things? Well, lo and behold, I found that they're everywhere. Like werewolf cults existed. The earliest ones I found were from ancient Greece, Mount Lycaon, and it goes back prehistoric, probably 2, 3, maybe 4,000 years. They're still doing archaeological digs in Mount Lycaon in Greece, and that's the earliest werewolf legend we have. Is very, very quickly that King Lycaeus, who was also the priest of this cult. The myth is in sort of later Homeric Greek culture. The myth is that Zeus came to visit him at the temple, in the undercover, like Zeus would do, right? And he spotted the King Lycaeus, the priest, saw him and said to himself, "Oh, I think it's Zeus. Let's test him and see if he really is." And in the myth, served him human flesh, and seeing if he really was Zeus, then he would know, and Zeus not only knew, but was deeply offended and turned him into a werewolf and sent him off into the woods for the next, I don't know. The myth changes. Some say he became a werewolf forever. Some say he was gone for 9 years and came back a human again. But these myths shift and change, right?
Sure.
So that's like the earliest one. I found an earlier werewolf story, which was from the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the goddess Ishtar cursed this kid who kept bringing her too many gifts and kept loving her so much, and she turned him into a werewolf and sent him off, and his dogs got her. So these things happen. Werewolves don't always have the best lifestyle realities, but so then I was like, holy moly, like there's these werewolf cults, right? I mean, And I'm an ancient historian, and I didn't know there were these werewolf cults. So then I'm looking, I go further down, I'm like going to Rome. Well, apparently most Romans believed in Vespelus or shapeshifters who turned into wolves. And I started using the Greek historians like Herodotus and then Latin historians like Livy. And I dug really deep on this because my master's degree is ancient history, right? I was like, okay, how did I not know about these werewolf cults before, right? But they're everywhere. There's werewolf cults everywhere. And then you know, like throughout different parts of the Roman Empire, Herodotus talks about the Nuri in Russia, who this is a typical story that I ran into over and over again. When he was traveling in Nuri, he went to the Nuri tribes. At a certain time every year, the entire tribe gathers and they all turn into werewolves for a week. Now, and then they shift out. Now, this is Herodotus, like one of the greatest historians ever, who's just writing very matter-of-factly, like if the whole tribe shape-shifted into werewolves, and then they had a really good time. This is the exact same story I heard and I read over and over again in Celtic countries, and in the Ossory tribe, for example, in Ireland. I'm geeking out a little bit here, but I'll be done. The Ossory tribe in Ireland was seen by Christian missionaries once a year for 3 weeks. The entire tribe would turn into werewolves and have a huge feast and have a huge party, and then they would come out of it and shapeshift back again. Now this is Christian missionaries, right, saying the exact same thing that Herodotus saw. So I heard this story over and over and over and over again, or rather I read this story over and over again all over the Western world. And then, you know, there's in the Sabine area of Italy, there's the cult of werewolves who started because wolves came and stole the food off the altar of the god that they worshipped, which was Seranus, who's a god of both the underworld and a solar deity. And they went running after the wolves to get the food back, and they went into a cave, and the wolves were there, but the cave was full of poison gas and killed a few of them, but did not kill the wolves. So they went back empty-handed, and they did an omen to their god, and the god said, "What's wrong with you? I sent the wolves to get the food." Like that was my whole point, was to send the wolves to get the food for me, says the god to them, right? And they're like, for your punishment, you will be werewolves every I don't know, once a year or several times a year, I don't remember exactly. And you will show that you are werewolves by walking on hot coals. And so it was the only cult in ancient Rome that did firewalking as part of their festival. When they shapeshifted, they went into a different body state, and they became werewolves, and they actually had a term. Each one of these cults has a term for werewolf. A werewolf, just quick etymology, werewolf means were is man and wolf is wolf, right? So a werewolf is someone who's half and half. And like in every single one of these cultures, I found the term in different ways. So and then I looked at the Nordic stuff. Have you seen the movie The Northman that just came out recently?
No, it's on my list, but I haven't had a chance to sit down with it.
All right. So just this is a quick intro into the North, you know, the Viking / northern tribes stuff. So my friends had kept telling me, because they knew my book, Werewolf Magic. I mean, this is the book I'm sort of talking about now. This is my initial book that wasn't supposed to be a book that ended up a book that is actually selling very well, better than my other books on other cults. But anyway, so we'll see, where was I going with this? About the werewolf cults. So they said to me, "You got to see this movie," and I said, "Oh no, I don't want to see another Northman movie." And they said, "No, you got to see it. It's got your book in it. It's got your book in it." I said, "Nah." So they kidnapped me and sat me down and put me in front of a big screen TV, and we watched The Northman. And I was like, "Oh, okay, it's like a Viking." You know, it's a Viking movie with lots of Viking stuff. It's very well done. Incredible movie. You'll love it. The scenery and the especially some of the more mystical scenes are really wonderful. It's all shot from the point of view of real Odinists and real real Vikings and their belief system, and you've got all kinds of mythical things kind of show. Anyway, there's a scene where the berserkers are initiated. Now, berserkers come in two flavors, and most people don't realize this. Berserkers are big, strong warrior Vikings or Northmen who could shapeshift before battle. Now, mostly you hear about berserkers, which comes from bear sark. Bear sark means to wear the bear skin. It means to shapeshift into a bear, and they would literally put a bear skin on to signify that they were in that state of consciousness. And I guess it's a good time to say something about shapeshifting. Like, you're not going to, whether you're a werewolf or a bear or whatever, you're not going to like grow a bear head or a wolf head and grow fur. And it would be great. I would love it if you could actually do that. I mean, that would be my goal in life, would be to like actually physically transform into a werewolf, would be like the best. But that's not what the werewolf cults were about. They were about unleashing their animal self, because we are animals. We're all animals. Judeo-Christianity has crushed that from us, because we get that God gave us dominion over the earth, and as a pagan, I don't believe that. I believe that we are here to interface with Gaia, not to subjugate and destroy it. So we in our culture we have this barrier between animal and human. And when one of the first things I do when I get a bunch of people together is say, okay, I want you to say I'm an animal, and people are very uncomfortable. Because their whole life they've been told, no, you're not an animal, you're a human. Humans are animals. We are animals. We're monkeys. We're hominids, right? We're not anything else. So anyway, these people, these different tribal groups, and then the Northmen, you had a Bear Sark and you had the Ulf Sark. Ulf Sark were people who turned into werewolves. And so there's the connection with the Vikings. So, and you'll see when you watch the Northmen, I'm bringing it back around again. When you watch the Northmen, what you're going to see is a shamanic shape-shifting initiation. And I don't want to spoil it for you, because when you see it and you see the shaman, I'm using the term shaman, but when you see the magic man and you see the initiation and you see the psychedelic soup they take and you see the process that goes through, they don't grow fur and everything, but they definitely shapeshift. And then the next scene is them being berserkers on the battlefield, where arrows don't bother them, and they nothing bothers them. It's a great movie. And I got to the end and I went, yay, they got werewolf magic just right.
Well, we need to actually pause here for a moment and take a break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to get into how these sorts of werewolf cults and history and mythology comes into what happens to a person who embraces this, and is it for everybody? Or not. We'll talk about that. But in the meantime, we're gonna listen to a word, several words, some fine words from our fine sponsors here at Witch Hat Chats, without whom we could not bring you this program. We'll be right back.
I'm Saul Ravencraft, co-host of Witch Hat Chats. I understand just how confusing and chaotic it can be to open to a path of magic and manifestation. Everything seems to turn on its head. I want to be an ally as you find the way upon your path. My studio setup will let us do readings, coaching, and exploration virtually, just as though you were sitting across the table from me. One size does not fit all, and we will work together to craft the right approaches to build your practice, your confidence, and your power using the tools of divination, magical works, and spirit connections. It's never too late to embrace a new path and emerge empowered. Go to TexasMojoMan.com and select Contact to begin. There's a message now. Let's get started working on your very good fortune.
At Witch Hat Chats, we promote magical knowledge, arts, and music from all cultures. We invite you to join us as our guest to share your practice, especially if your traditions are lesser known. Email us at witchhatchats@gmail.com. Tune in every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our Facebook page.
And welcome back to Witch Hat Chats. I am still here with Denny Sargent, who has continued to not grow fangs and fur as he promised, but he's howling a little bit. I like that. I
can't resist doing that.
Well, we all should howl a little bit.
We should all howl. In fact, there's a Facebook page called Howl at 8 p.m. I don't know if you know about that. That was created during the pandemic, and it has over 8,000 members all over the world of people who stick their head out the window and howl at 8 p.m.
I love it.
I love that so much. I don't know why. I think it's the best.
So, Denny, you carried us a ways through some of the history and the pervasiveness of werewolf culture throughout the world and throughout history. And I am surprised to find out how much of it there is. It's interesting in movies that a lot of that is cast as a curse, and the wolf nature is this uncontrollable beast that can't help but kill and run amok. Although it sounds like there's a little running amok that goes on there. But you are applying this to magic, and as a magical practitioner, I know that magic is really much more about manifesting and communion with nature and creating harmonies and that kind of thing. And so clearly there's something going on here when your wolf nature gets tied into your magic and apparently transformed it. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I was initiated as a witch, and I'm a witch. I still am. And
a werewitch.
Well, I guess so now at this point. But so the idea of working with nature, of course, is important. The idea of the Gaia as a transcendent force in our world and needs to be honored is, of course, important. But as I started doing more research, because this is what I do with the whole werewolf gnosis that was happening with me, I began to realize that the earliest religion in the world was animism. This is the earliest stuff that we find in prehistoric digs, and the evidence that we find that is so prehistoric. There was no writing, but if you look at the cave paintings, for example, in Lascaux, there's the earliest werewolf image I found was a cave painting that's 40,000 years old. That literally shows a werewolf. It's a man with a spear and a penis and a wolf head, and you see these transformative entities. So having met shamans, having real legitimate shamans in different tribal cultures, and having hung out with animistic people, I began to realize that the roots of witchcraft and the roots of our magic is really animism and working with animal spirits. This is the oldest thing that's out there. So in a sense, I'm not doing anything particularly new. I'm just reaching back and trying to rediscover and revive traditions that existed long ago. And if anything else, that's what my books are. It's just a revival. And it sounds silly. Werewolf magic is like it's a rather odd thing, and people kind of laugh. But then they read the history section, they read what I'm after, and they read the amount of work I've done on it. They're like, oh, he's really done some work on it. And I just want to very briefly mention that as I went through historical, because this is how I am. I'm very straightforward in terms of finding the history of things. I got down to the fact that, I got down to the invasion of Christianity into Europe and through the Roman Empire and whatnot. And even when Christianity was nascent and was taking over the whole Western world, I did find that people still believed in shape-shifting and werewolves, that people could go into a state of consciousness and change into this animal being. And the church more or less ignored it for a while. And then around 1500, they decided that werewolfery, one of my favorite words, the werewolfery or werewolfism, had to be evil because some force had to help people shift from human to wolf, and it couldn't be God, therefore it was Satan, and that's when they started persecuting. And just for those of you interested in witchcraft, as I started digging through the witchcraft trial documents, what I found was that about 50% of all witches, quote unquote witches, that were arrested, tortured, and generally put to death, were also accused of being werewolves. And in some of the more interesting dialogues, I found literally how they did it, and that they would meet in their coven in the woods, and the devil or the man in black or the head of the coven. That there were different titles. The Lord of the Forest is the one that was used a lot, which probably harkens to Pan and Keranos and all those things, right? But they had very specific ways of doing it. They would rub a salve on them, some sort of psychedelic salve, and then they would go into a deep trance state. They would leave their body in the form of a wolf, and the head of the coven would sort of guide them in this sort of werewolf shapeshifting. So it all connects. Like, it's like being a witch from the age of 14 in New York to this. Suddenly, I connected. Like, oh, if you're a witch, then in your lineage is werewolfery or werewolfism, and then other shapeshifting, right? So why am I doing this, and why does it do any good, and how is it magic? Like, I'll address those things right away. So for me, it was therapy. I was like in a really bad state, and I revert to, I work with the gods, and I work with my tantric gods, and I do magical work to try to make myself feel better and be a better person and all these sort of things. And none of that was working. And I already explained that I hit this wall, and this wolf spirit came and captured me. After a while, after working with this, I looked through some of my interviews with shamans. I was like, oh my God, this is classic. A spirit actually came and pulled me into this. So that's good. So what's the whole point? Like, what do we do? What I started, the actual pragmatics of it is to, one, accept that you're an animal, which is very hard for most people because they've been brainwashed their whole life by society, by religion, that no, we are above animals. We have souls. This is what Christianity tells us. This is what Islam says, what Judaism says. We have souls that are eternal. Animals do not. And we are superior to everything. We control the world because God gave it to us. We can destroy it. We can chew it up. We can do whatever we want because that's what God wants us to do. And so these patriarchal monotheistic religions have created this dichotomy between us and the animals. When you read some of the things that Chief Sealth said, or other tribal people in America have said about this, they see it as madness, that we're destroying the nature that feeds us. We're destroying the nature that connects us with everything. There's nothing we have or do that is not directly connected with Gaia, or the Earth Mother, or however you want to view it. And yet we have managed to wall ourselves off from the thing that gives us life. We are in our boxes, and we get our food wrapped in plastic, and we know we are so disconnected from nature that we don't feel it anymore, and we suffer. We suffer terribly because being part of nature, as tribal people will tell you, as Native Americans I've talked to have said, if you disconnect from nature, you're just going to shrivel up. I mean, we are one with nature. It infuses us, it helps us, it guides us, right? I mean, and as pagans, these are all things we believe in. And yet, but deep down psychologically, there's a wall between us and nature because this is how we were raised. The whole point of animal self, the animal self, unleashing your animal self and doing this stuff that I'm doing, is to bypass the higher cortex brainwashing that has been done to us, that we are not animals, that we cannot have the sensory extensions that animals have, and that we have souls and they don't. All these lies, in my opinion. And there's this wall. And when I have basic trance state stuff that I do, none of this is particularly complicated. It's going into a deep trance state, shutting off your higher cortex and activating what Carl Sagan called the animal brain, or the dragon brain, which is your lower cortex. So how this works, very, very briefly, because I go into it a lot, and I'm into the physiognomy, and I'm into the neurology of this as well. The way it really works is what you're doing is you're activating the lower, more primal brain that's still here. This all makes sense and works because you I don't know how to explain this. You recapitulate every single evolutionary step that's ever happened. You contain all animal DNA. The first cell that existed on this planet branched into all the animals, all the beings, everything. And so we literally contain all the DNA. We contain all the coding of every animal that existed. This is the basis of quote unquote shapeshifting or animism in a sense. So for example, we are 98% genetically the same as chimpanzees. We are monkeys. We are not generally superior, we are just monkeys. And we are 78% the same genetically as a wolf. So we have, this is science. I mean, this isn't crazy that we have this in our body. The sort of occult part of this, the magic part of this, is I think we can access that genetic code and we can work with it as we choose to. But if that's a little too far up, then my general view is that what we can do is we can go into a trance state, drop, sort of shut down this part, open up this part, and unleash it so that we can let the animal self take over. In my case, the animal that has come to me, that has worked with me, is a wolf. So I'm using the visualization of werewolf, and I found thousands of people have been deeply involved in this, and this book has sold more than any of my other 20 books. And a lot of people relate to the werewolf thing, but I've had people ask me about, well, what about other animal forms? And that's going to be the next book I'm going to write. Is yes, the techniques that I've recreated and re-put together, and then worked with. I have a pack now, and we do this every full moon. I've come to realize like how to do this, to go into this deep trance state, let your animal self take over, and then exist as a pure animal for a period of time, which is really fun and really powerful, and your senses change, and you know, then when you I have everybody come out of it so they don't run amok and God knows what would happen. And, I mean, some people, right? And so then the next day, I always check in with my pack, like, okay, how are you feeling today, you know? And we always go back and forth, because the day after, I feel fantastic. I mean, we all do. We've managed to shut up and dump all the gunk in our brain that we don't need. Things we worry about, things that might happen, could happen, maybe happen. All the stuff that keeps you awake at night shuts down. And when you're in a pure animal state, you're just existing in nature as an animal, meaning you finally can pay attention to the ecosystem. You can see the magic. So I have 3 terms I use for werewolf magic. One is insight, inspiration, and intuition, right? These are the 3 things that animals have that we have, but we ignore, and therefore we don't. We've lost touch with our instincts, our real instincts, and our intuition, knowing when something is good, when something is bad, without having a logical reason, right? And then insights are those moments that occur to us that don't have a direct connection with our conscious mind. Often they're unconscious, right? But the way I see the world from an animistic point of view, from a shape-shifting point of view, is that you have the wildness, which is this when you get out of human culture and get into the deep woods, there is an essence or power to it that I call the wildness, which is the most important part of our planet. It is when you go into a jungle or you go into a woods where there's no human contact or very little human stuff, there's a vast pool of magic and power that exists just there in its very primal state. And that's the wildness. That's the holiest thing that we have, is going into that. And it's hard to find now, to find real wildness, right? I mean, you can go to a park, but the wildness is not what it was. You go up into the Cascade Mountains surrounded by giant trees, and there's roaming wild animals. All that whole infrastructure equals wildness, right? Then there's another thing I call the weird, W-Y-R-D, which is when I'm in that state of consciousness of being a werewolf, when I'm in a purely primordial state, I can see the web of energy that interconnects the ecosystem, and I can tap into it. I can feel and I can sense where is the water, where are the big trees. I feel something moving. I don't know how to explain it, but it's not just sort of imagination, you know. It's being able to literally perceive what's going on in your ecosystem. And as an animal, animals do that. Animals know intuitively where to go for water, where to do things. They're tuned into their ecosystem. We lost it. I've met tribal people who have not lost it. You know, people in Peru and Guatemala and Native Americans. I've read what they've written, and I've talked to them. They enter the woods, they enter the forest, fully embracing it and fully joyous to be there. They're not afraid of the animals. You know, the Chief Seattle wrote this whole thing about, you know, if you fear the animals, you go to the woods and fear the animals. And you fear the very nature that sustains you. And we enter the world and we see the animals as our brothers and sisters. They are people. We are people. The deer are people. The bear are people. And this is what we've lost. And this is what werewolf magic has kind of brought back to me, is when I enter that state of consciousness as an animal, you know, and I'm able to trance myself down and get into this animal state, I suddenly see everything very, very differently, utterly differently, without any cognition, just the way it is. So that's kind of how that works. What we actually do is pretty straightforward. We do what most shamanic cultures have done. We rely on rocking and swaying. We rely on growling, howling. There's a whole sequence to it. I've actually developed it, and we've expanded it quite a bit. And we don't talk, because the minute you start talking, I'm a linguist, right? So, and I know about how the brain works and how language works, because this is what I do. The minute you start talking, as I'm talking to you right now, it seems to me like I'm thinking and it's coming out of my mouth, but it's actually far more complicated neurologically than that. You have 6 parts of your brain. That's my understanding, is that there's six parts of your brain, which are all activated in order to make this miracle called speech, cognition that turns into speech, happen. But the minute you do that, you're involving your higher cortex function. When your upper brain, your conscious brain, what I'm using right now to have this babbling conversation. But when we do our shape shifting, the goal is we stop talking completely. And we go into, I mean, I can show you very briefly, like we'll start with what's called rumbling, which is just going, okay, and during that for quite a period of time, we're making certain visualizations. One is that our ego and ourself is slowly sinking down into our unconscious mind. The other is that we're reaching down into the unconscious mind and visualizing our wolf curled up in a cave, or our werewolf self, or however, that's curled up in a sort of a darkness, and we're unleashing it and letting it out. This takes a bunch of practice. It takes a bunch of visualization. People get into a certain state. But once that starts, once people have figured out how to do that, then it happens faster and faster and better and better. So I'll be doing rumbling, then we'll move to, and then we use growling. I've worked out a system of up growling and down growling. So a lot of the ritual work we did, almost all of it, very few times do we add some speaking. So up growling is obviously the energy comes up. I use for banishing, we use growling. We go around 9 times around a circle, and we go, and we visualize ourselves once that wolf visualization's happening. We visualize ourselves as werewolves, basically blasting anything negative around. That takes care of banishing for us, and then You know, we'll sway, we'll rock. Everything's in my book exactly how to do it. And then in Werewolf Pack Magic, actually, which is the new one, I have actually more. We've added more what I call nonverbals, which are not speaking but using. So, for example, we do the rocking, we do the swaying, we get to a point, then we do the howling. Up howling brings us all together. And then when we want to earth things, we'll down howl, and bring it down. So anyway, that's a very short, there's a lot more to it, but there's a very short view of it. When we invoke our gods, because we're pagan, right? We invoke them with certain sounds, not by saying, "Oh, Gaia, please come." So the earth is ma, ma, ma. The Lord of the Forest, or the Horn God, however you want to view him, is ha, ha. And as we do this, we're reaching out. You know, when we invoke Ma, we bring up the Earth Mother, and we spend a lot of time visualizing the energy from the earth coming up, filling us up, helping us transform our etheric or astral body into our visualized wolf form, a werewolf form. Then we invoke the Lord of the Forest with Ha, and we visualize and feel all the energy of the trees surrounding us, fill us and invigorate us, and again, help us with this transformation. Then we invoke the full moon with Ah, and we invoke the lunar energy to come down and sort of build up our astral form of the werewolf. And this is where we're visualizing more intently what we look like and how we look like as werewolves, you know, and then we fill up that particular, what Lacanto, the historian Lacanto calls the double, which is the astral form, or it's a traditional in lots of ancient cultures. There's more than one soul, the eternal soul, and one of them is the bar, the external energy form. So we're building that. So it's all based on stuff that I actually researched, but we do it, and then we're in that state, and then that's the lunar mother. Then we invoke the wolf spirit is okay, and then when we end everything, we end with So the ritual, what it sounds like if you watched us, it sounds like us going like this. But this takes a long time. It takes us a good 1 to 2 hours to get into this trance state. It's not, you know, like there are certain substances that are illegal here in Washington State. That you know, like mushrooms are very popular here now, and it's essentially legal in our area. The Viking movie that I told you about, where they're rubbing a Saul with psychedelic stuff, with hembane and all this stuff that's kind of dangerous. It's obvious that the shape-shifting stuff that happened in prehistoric times had some other thing that they were doing, so probably some psychedelic is it. And when you see the Northman, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And so something that it doesn't make it happen, but it helps the visualization, it helps the energy flow, and it helps the belief system. So once we're in that state, then we just exist. And my dog is involved. My dog is a member of our pack, and then, you know, my pack members will run after the dog and play with it and jump or roll on the ground, or we spend a lot of time lying on the earth or connecting with Gaia as animals or whatever. We hang out, we have fun, we do these things. And then we do a lot of these things to bring it back down. And again, I got a lot of these techniques from different cultures and different shamanic cultures from Norse and whatnot. Like, okay, how do you end it so you don't run amok and, like, you know, end up in a loony bin. And so we bring it down and we end it, we earth it, then we come out of it. It takes a while, shaking, what's called seething in Norse magic. I've tied in a lot of things, and this works and brings us back down. So and then we sit around and we talk, and, you know, we party and have a beer, and then we talk about what we experienced and how we did it and what we felt. And so I've had some very interesting magical. So I'm always testing, right? Because I'm a historian and I'm a academic. So I one of the things I wanted to see was like, all right, here's what happened. One time I sat around and I said, all right, we all saw each other's werewolf form. And everybody's like, yes. I go, okay, we haven't discussed it. What do I look like? What kind of werewolf am I? And without a second thought, everybody looked at me and said, oh, you have black fur with some gray. Now, here's the funny part. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And we went around in a circle like, we have this lovely woman who's with us. And she's like, well, what am I? And we all looked at her and we said, oh, you're a white wolf. Like we all said that at the same moment. Right. She goes, yeah, that's right. We every single person we described exactly.
Amazing.
So I don't know what kind of proof that is, but we all went, ooh, you're okay. Your brow was some gray. You're a solid gray wolf. One person was something else, and so without having discussed this, I just thought it was very funny. I thought it was kind of proof of success in a way.
Well, that's good enough for me. We're going to take another break here. There's so much to talk about with Denny. You are genuinely transformed and transforming when you get into this, which I love. So we're going to take a break and get a word from our sponsors. When we come back, it's going to be time for the Witch's Cabinet portion, where we look at something practical. And Denny tells me that we can spend some time talking about what do you connect with, and is this a path that you want to pursue? Obviously, we can't give it all to you. Too much to give. Too much. We don't have enough time. You got to get the book.
Right.
But
That's the first
we're definitely going to get into some thoughts so that you can go, I need more. But cool. Right after a word from our sponsors.
I love it. It's great.
The Witching Hour is here, and new magical products arrive at Moonlight Potions and Charms. And what appears during the magical hour? Our mysterious triple goddess Hecate key necklace comes in 2 sizes, perfectly aligned with her will, so her devotees can find their way through the darkness. The handsome hand of God statues, believed to be protective talismans of luck, fertility, abundance, and good health, come in black or white. One of the best ways to bring your ancestors with you no matter where you go is our traveling ancestor altar on the go. They come in 3 sizes, small, medium, and large, perfect for all of your needs. They include candles, an oil, a toy for the little ones who passed on, and so much more to honor their beloved dead. And our Papa Legba key necklace are perfect for the devotees of the King of the Crossroads. Comes in 2 sizes, each one specifically prayed over and dedicated to Papa Legba himself. And appearing for the first time, Baron Sam D and Mama Gray J, Altar on the Go limited edition. Yes, you can take your altar to the cemetery with you. How cool is that? The traveling altar is complete with top hats, coffin nails, a cross from Mama Bridget, and so much more with room for you to add your own items. So show Baron Sam D and Mama Bridget the altar perfect for them. And don't forget, our barebone trio, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Speak No Evil, Skeletons, have returned. There is so much more in our wicked store to help you to embrace the power of your own magic. So come on in to Moonlight Potions and Charms at www.moonlightpotionscharms.com and discover the wicked things that ignite the magical passion in you. Anybody can tell you what is on a tarot or oracle card. What matters is seeing beyond what others may not be able to see and help the client to uncover what lies in the mist. What do readings from Moonlight Potions and Charms do? Wednesday I did this ancestor reading, and it was an amazing reading. And it was a detailed reading, and I remember talking to this customer's ancestors, and it was so delightful, and he wanted some questions to be answered about the magic in his family because he didn't know. And his family was mostly like most of our families are. You know how everything is like hush hush when it comes to the magic in his family. And he wanted to know who can he actually talk to about the history of the magic in his family. And I was able to give him specifically who he can go to talk to about that. What particular deity he can actually go to be able to help him with this. And it was just an amazing reading, and talking to his ancestors. They were such a delight, and they told me so much about this customer. It was just an absolutely wonderful, wonderful reading for him. And I was just so happy to be able to give him this wonderful reading. It's really amazing to be able to give people these readings, these products that's really going to help them, and be able to give back to the community, because this is what Moonlight Potions and Charms is about. We want to help you to embrace the power of your own magic. That is what we are all about. It's to help you to do that.
Book now and allow our wonderful staff to take care of your spiritual reading needs. And there is so much more in our Wicked store to help you to embrace the power of your own magic. So come on in to Moonlight Potions and Charms at www.moonlightpotionscharms.com and discover the wicked things that ignite the magical passion in you.
And welcome back to Witch Hat Chats, our final segment, the Witch's Cabinet, where we try and bring something practical that you can do try this at home. That's the whole point here. And we're in kind of a weird space today with Denny Sargent talking about connecting with our animal selves and how that might be discovered. And obviously, the best way for someone to dig into this is to read your books.
Right.
But some people may not be sure if they're quite ready to open this. So is there something that someone can do to crack that door a little bit and sniff it out and see if that's something that they're ready for?
Yeah, the first book actually has some really good beginner exercises to sort of help you make some decisions on whether this is something you really want to do. But if you're drawn to nature, first of all, if you're a pagan or a witch, and you see nature as holy, and you believe in Gaia, you believe in the Earth Mother and all that, then you're already there. I mean, there's really not much else to it. I think what's important is to start with the understanding that you're an animal, and keep in mind that you've been brainwashed your whole life into believing that you're not an animal, that you are superior to animals. And even if you are a pagan and you know that's true, we've all been brainwashed by our culture to believe that we are somehow superior to animals. But first of all, start with that. Like when I do this with groups of people, and at Starwood, I did an activity with 200 people, most of whom had never done any of this werewolf magic stuff and didn't know what I was doing. They were just interested. And I walked them through some of the stuff I've already showed you in terms of rocking and swaying and all that. And I got 200 people to shapeshift. I got 200 people to go into an altered state. I mean, many of them were running around on all fours, which I can't do around the circle. And I've never seen people do that before. I was like, and it took a while to bring them back because they didn't want to come back. And I was like, no, I'm not letting you run amok in a pagan conference. And once they came back, they wanted immediately to do it again. Like 100 of them stood there and said, "We want to do it again." And I'm like, "Whoa, let's let the dust settle a little bit." So, but the woman who ran everything, who's the Starwood princess, who's amazing. She came running up and said, "Oh, if you guys want to do it again, we'll set up another time." So I ended up doing 3 shape-shifting sessions during the conference, during the event, because so many people were interested and they heard us howling and they wanted to do it. So the bottom line is start by going into nature, like not a park, like go into like as the deepest nature you can find and sit and like open, call up your animal self, whatever makes you feel comfortable. The best way to do that is to not talk, not think, put away your cell phone and just connect with nature, and maybe some simple growling and swaying. Stand up and just simply, and you should extend it and like lower. Don't be thinking about it. Just let your body take over. So you're doing things like, and just go into the most primal self you can, and then just like feel, change your consciousness so you can actually all of a sudden feel the webs of nature and the flow of nature and the ecosystem around you. I mean, get out and just like find a way to penetrate and work with it. This book is by far the best book in terms of this. It starts with very simple exercises. I have one that says, calling to the wolf spirit, because there's 2 different things that are going on here. As a pagan, as a witch, a lot of this is psychological. A lot of this is me working with my own physiognomy, my own consciousness, working with my conscious mind, my unconscious mind, doing different techniques that have been around forever. But what triggered a lot of it for me was calling this external spirit, this God form, the great wolf spirit, and it guided me and showed me. So one of the first things you should do, if this is something that calls to you, is you go into nature and you call the wolf spirit to you. You go into real nature, or if it's another deity form that works for you, then that's whatever you can do, or whatever you're interested in doing. For me, it was calling the wolf spirit, and everybody I've worked with who's done this has done this very simple ritual, going to the woods and bringing some raw meat for the spirit and invoking and banishing and just saying, I'm calling on you to help me break through this wall between being a human who is brainwashed into thinking it's superior to everything, and being an animal and my animal self, which is right there waiting to try to help. Keep in mind that our whole culture and everything about us has suppressed our animal self. Anytime you use words, and words are powerful, and oh, you eat like a wolf, or oh, he is such a wolf, or we use animal terms always negatively. It's never positive. And this comes from our Judeo-Christian heritage of animals are wrong. They don't have a soul. We can do anything we want with them. And once you get past that block, when you accept, look in a mirror and say to yourself, I am an animal, and say it with firm conviction. And the first couple of times you say it, you're going to be like, I am an animal. Like I got all 200 people to say, I am an animal. They're like, I am an animal. And I would say, no, like this, I am an animal. And then finally, when I got them to do that, they were like in the zone. They were like, right. They had a moment of consciousness, like, yeah, I am a friggin' animal. I mean, we are. We're not any different from any of the other animals. We just happen to have this higher cortex function, which is both good and drives us crazy. So, right. So those are some of the few things I would recommend: is get out into the woods, connect with nature. If you really want to go further with it, I have tons of exercises and spells in here on how to work your way into it. I have very simple things. I have protective things. I use Norse stuff. I use Latin stuff. I use Greek stuff. So I went into the ancient werewolf cultures and cults, and I tried to pull out phrases and ideas and things that would help trigger. And having a pack has been very helpful, because we're going through. I mean, I have all these things that work for me. Once I had a group of people, I was like, they'd be like, yeah, I don't like that so much. Can we change this much? And so it's become much more holistic, and it's become much better. This is the final book. This is the book that's for groups, and it's a Shapeshifter's Book of Shadows. So I actually fought for that subtitle, the Shapeshifter's Book of Shadows, because as a witch, I think that it's really important that we bring back lycanthropy into witchcraft, because 50% of all witches who were accused of witchcraft did lycanthropy, were accused of lycanthropy, were doing werewolf stuff. It's part of our witchcraft culture. It really is, no joke. And when I started researching, I was like, why aren't all witches doing it? And the last two covens I worked with, they always did a shape-shifting thing, usually around Halloween, but sometimes other times, but it wasn't real shape-shifting. It's visualization, close your eyes, visualize you're an owl flying the woods, that kind of thing, which is fine and wonderful and great. But that's not what this is about. That's not what witches were really doing in the Middle Ages. They were going into deep trance states with some sort of help through chanting and through visualization and through exercises. They were going unconscious. They were entering a coma state, which I don't necessarily, I do pretty much like half, three-quarter shape-shifting. I'm not going to go into a full trance state and project out of my body. In this book, at the very end of the book, I have a theoretical reconstruction of how you would do that, how they did that. Because they would get, wolves would get stabbed, and then they would track down the witch who they thought it was, and the witch would be in bed with a stab wound, So there's a way of projecting, taking the animal self, projecting it into your etheric body, going into a trance state, and then leaving your body, which some people do with astral work, right? It's just solidifying your astral form and sending it out so that other people see the wolf. So I've managed to piece together how this worked and how, people at the time were very open to different belief systems, and they would see werewolves, and the werewolves would disappear, and then they would track down the person. And anyway, so there's a lot in here on how to basically what this is about, the history, how to do it. This goes much deeper into group work, and I've actually added, because I had hack input, I added a bunch of techniques that really make things more potent in terms of shape-shifting stuff. This just hit the bookstore, so I'm really proud of it, and
excellent.
Really excited about it. I like the pictures. It's got pictures of my altar and all this other stuff. So
nice.
So I don't know.
Denny Sargent, you have convinced our audience that they need to connect with their animal self. They want to read those books. They want to go deeper. They want to know more. How do they connect with you and accomplish that?
Oh, well, I'm easy to get a hold of, and clearly I like to talk. So they can get me through Facebook. Denny Sargent Author is my full name, DennySargent, author. I have my own Facebook page just for my author. I'm also on Facebook as Denny Sargent, and people can friend me if they want to. An easy way to get a hold of me is through my website, which is Werewolf Magic, and magic is with a K, werewolfmagic.com. And anybody can go there. And actually, I've put a bunch of rituals there. So for example, the big ritual work that I did at Starwood is the exact way to do the shape-shifting is there. I have a bunch of rituals that are on the website that anybody can take and use, and for free. I don't care. I'm happy that people find some use to it and some interest in it. So yeah, my website has a ton of stuff. It has contacts. It has all my other books. I've written a bunch of other books. Nothing has sold or been as exciting as this one, I've got to say. These two have taken off. And if you had told me that these were books that were going to do well, I would have laughed at you, because I went to Pandecon to sell book. Like, I had 5 different book proposals. And I went to the head of acquisitions for Llewellyn and for Weisers, and both I've published with. And they went through all of it. They're like, no. Oh, we want this one. And it was Werewolf Magic. I was like, my friends pushed me to push this book. I said, nobody's going to want a book called Werewolf Magic. They're like, no, trust me, they will. Like, no, right, fine. And yeah, both of them wanted it, and Llewellyn got it. And so and then I ended up doing a second book. So I really hadn't thought that was going to happen. I thought this is pretty crazy stuff. But, when I get people in a group and I walk them through it, and we go into a trance state, they come out of it going, wow, that like worked. And the thing that shocked me the most, that really drew me to doing Werewolf Pack Magic, is that I started doing groups like at Pantheacon and other places. And the more people I have together, the faster people shift and go under. And I don't know what that means. Somebody probably has a good answer, but pack, I guess, groups of people, I don't know, mob psychology, I don't know, but people go into that trance state and they come out of it like, you know, people at first are like, oh, that's a little weird, I don't know. And then they go through and they come out and they go, can we do it again? I want to do it again. That was great.
So is there anything that you would like to leave us with, Denny?
I think it's really crucial that we take care of the planet. And I think by connecting with your animal self, by connecting with nature, you open up your consciousness and you become more aware of how crucial the ecosystem and the planet is. And that's the most important thing that I've learned from all of this, actually, is that we are part of nature. We are an animal within nature, and that the environmental disaster that's happening we can at least come to some terms with how we can do better and connect with nature through being animals, the animals we are.
Right. Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for everything. I've really enjoyed this. Oh!
Hell yeah. Well, that wraps up this episode of Witch Hat Chats. It was hard to do this without Nikki, but we got it done, and we look forward to having her back. Thanks again to Denny Sargent and to all of you who tune in and help keep this broadcast going. Next week, Nikki and I are going to chat about the wonderful, spooky things of Samhain. Ladies, these are your rights. Nobody gives them or takes them away from you. You are not property. Make sure you let all men know, and make them understand this. And you need to vote. The people who want to be slave owners and have control over everything and everybody, they got to go. Got to fire their ass. And the only way to do that is with your vote. So make sure you're registered. Make sure you know where to go. If you need babysitters or transportation or something like that, make sure you've got your options set up, because you might be able to vote early or something like that. But if you don't put your voice in, then we can't make the difference. Nikki wants to remind you to wear a mask, get your vaccinations and boosters, and support the people that are helping you. It's an ecosystem, like Denny was saying. And keep your furry babies, your family, and yourself safe. Have a magical week.
I know some people who like to chat. I think they're witches, how about that? And every Sunday at 12 o'clock. And if you're hurting, they're willing to talk. Nikki Kirby with that black stone. I agree, Evermoving We Rise. Life and soul with a beautiful mind. I give you blessings under moonlight. I know some people who like to chat. I think they're witches, how about that? And every Sunday at 12 o'clock. And if you're hurting, they're willing to talk.